unfortunately you got me for a second week in a row. But let's see what we can learn about after last week. So to recap really quickly, 1 Samuel starts with who? Eli Samuel. It's in the name. You have things happen in the Ark of Covenant. It comes, it goes, it gets lost, it's stolen, that kind of thing happens. And Israel asks a thing of God they should never have asked for, and it causes a lot of problems, which is what? They asked for a king, right? So they asked for a king. Who is the first king? Saul. Perfect, right? And you have Saul starts okay. Like, he actually seemed like the good guy. He seemed like the kind of person you'd want to be king. In terms of like the physical attributes you expect, is like he was tall, he was handsome, he was man fit for war. He could do all the things you'd expect of someone, right? Like if you were to look at someone and say, who is like the person, the it guy in the room that would pick out to be king, Saul looked like the person you'd pick. And Saul ends up being a mistake, right? And do you remember the word God uses to describe setting up Saul as king? He deeply what? Yeah, right? He deeply regrets, right? It's like where he goes to Samuel and he tells him, I deeply regret making Saul king. Like, what does that mean? Like, for God to deeply regret doing something is stuffed up really badly, yeah? Not to speak of God as regretting a decision, because he's perfect. He already knows the decision that is to be made. But regretting that the people would ask for a king in this way, and he would give them the king they wanted, he regrets that that's what they desired, right? Okay. And then you have David, right? Who is anointed and lined up for as the next king. And David's almost the opposite of what you'd expect of a king, right? Like, even in his own household, he was like the guy you forgot about, right? Like, he was the last kid off the block, pretty much. He was the youngest one. And he was the one who was like left with the sheep, that even when Samuel came, like he came to visit his family, they don't even bother to tell him. Like, imagine this. Imagine, I don't know, Pope Tawadros was in Australia, right? And your family got the blessing of him coming to visit your house, right? Do you leave someone out of the household? No, like you're not going to leave even like the little baby child who can't even speak is going to be shouting the whole time. You don't leave them out of that gathering, right? You bring the little baby child. Yet Samuel, the prophet of Israel, comes to the household of Jesse, and Jesse doesn't even bother bringing David, right? That's the guy who became the next king, yeah? Like, go back and read Psalm 151. It's the one we do on Joyous Saturday. It's a beautiful psalm. And it's like, I was small among my brothers, right? This is how it starts. It starts with the story of like, he was the one who was neglected out of his family, and yet the Lord did this, yet the Lord did that, and yet the Lord was with me. And it's a beautiful psalm. And then you have David versus Goliath, and you have Saul after this event is jealous of David for the rest of the story, right? There's one particular thing actually. Do you know what made Saul very jealous? It's a song. Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands, right? To put in context, like imagine like you had all the women of the city, yeah? This is what happened. All the women of the city come out dancing and singing, praising David because he has slain more than Saul and he's great and he's whatever. Imagine you as king looking at that and seeing this guy who should be like a little shepherd boy who you've given the chance to battle Goliath is now the guy who's like over you and who's praised by everyone else, right? I could imagine how jealous you could get in that situation. You then have a lot of things happen. Saul explicitly tries to kill David and tells his court. Jonathan warns him, he gets out, right? And that brings us to last week. You know what happened? You had David is fleeing now. And the first place he flees to is the city of the priests in the tribe of Benjamin, right? And that city was called Nob, N-O-B, right? He then gets the showbread, he gets the sword of Goliath, he runs, yeah? The first place he runs to is the least expected of places, where he goes to the hometown of Goliath, right? You know the guy he killed? Yeah, that guy? Yeah, he's walked into his hometown. So he's not in Israel right now. He's actually gone off to the land of the Philistines, yeah? And he walks in, like just imagine this scene. I think I said like aura farming last week. I know I'm a child, I'm so sorry. But he walks into the city with the sword of Goliath. Like you can't flex any harder than that. Like he's walked into the hometown of the guy he has killed with the sword that he used to kill him, right? I don't know why he thought this was a good idea. I still can't make sense of that. But he has to act crazy to get out because they try to kill him. They get a hold of him, they realize he's here, they take him to the king, and he acts like he's a bit crazy so he can get out of it. You then have, he runs back to Israel hides in a cave, right? The cave of Adullam, right? And then he ends up escaping from there again because he's afraid that Saul might get a hold of him in Israel. And he goes to Moab, which is another land of the Gentiles, right? His parents end up staying there, but then Gad the prophet tells him, no, go back to Israel. So he leaves his parents there for the king to take care of them, which is very strange, by the way. He's a Gentile king. It's not his own people who are taking care of his family. And then he runs to the forest of Hereth, right? And then you have this whole thing where Saul finds out that, remember, the priests helped him at the beginning of chapter 21. So the priests help him, and there's a random guy from Saul's household who saw him, right? The guy called Doeg, which is, we call him the little rat. Just remember, the little rat in the story of David is Doeg, right? Where this guy goes and tells Saul what happened, yeah? Saul then goes back to the priests, and long story short, ends up getting them killed. None of his soldiers want to kill the priests, but Doeg, the guy, the little rat again, he is the one who actually goes in and kills all the priests, right? Which is crazy. And you have only one of the priests survive, and his name is Abiathar, Abiathar, and he takes refuge with David. Yeah? That's everything so far in the book of Samuel. This week, we now have a lot more fighting and a lot more of David trying to run away. So let us start. Verses 1 to 5, please. Get some read it out.
Then they told David, saying, Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, Go and attack the Philistines, and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord once again. And the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, struck them with a mighty blow, and took away their livestock. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah.
Okay, awesome. So what's happened here? The chapter starts with what? So remember, David has run to the forest of Hereth. You have the son of the high priest is now run back to him. This was the end of last chapter. And how does chapter 23 start? With the action, right? Yeah. Just jumping straight back into the action, right? So let me try and build some context for you. David is a fugitive in his own country, right? David is in a lot of trouble if the king gets a hold of him. David is in trouble if anyone who's on Saul's side gets a hold of him, right? He's in a lot of trouble pretty much. And what's happening? He finds out that the Philistines have gone into a city nearby in the land of Israel, right, which is the dominion of who? King Saul. No, it's not. He's not king yet. He's not in charge of this area. And he finds out this is happening. He finds out about this fight. What would the normal response be? I have nothing to do with this. I need to hide because anyone gets a hold of me, I'm stuffed, right? Now, what's very strange is that Saul, as king, knowing this is happening, should be sending up people to protect it, right? He should be sending up people to protect his territory, to protect his country. But the impression we get reading between the lines is that Saul was probably more concerned with chasing after David, trying to find him, and a skirmish like this was probably out of his mind. He probably didn't care. And David is caring here, right? David, although he's in the midst of his own problem, right? He's in the midst of a terrible tribulation. This guy can't go home at the risk of death. His first thought is, should I go help these guys? Right? And then notice what happens in this interaction. How many times does David go back to God to ask if we should do this? It's not once, so I'll make that very obvious. It's not once. If it's not once, what else could it be? Twice. Perfect, right? So David actually asked God twice. Why does he ask him twice? What happens the first time? So he gets the response. By the way, he gets a response from God both times, right? And God tells him, go protect them. But what happens after he tells the people that this is what God has said? Perfect. Thanks, Johnny. People were afraid, right? Why were they afraid? And do you know how many people were with David? 600, right? So 400, actually, you're right. So in the last chapter, it said 400. By this point, we know probably 600. Why? Because in verse 13, I think it was, it mentioned 600 people. Yeah, verse 13, right? So imagine this. You have 600 people. You have like this ragged group of people. Remember, these were people who came to him because they had their own problems and they were coming around David to feel like they had some kinship. Right, we mentioned this in the last chapter, where all those in tribulation came to hang out with David, if I can put it like that, right? 600 of them against the whole city, and right, this is not like some random like village city. It's not some random houses put together. This was a walled city, right? So it would have been like a fortress almost. And so he has to, with 600 people, somehow take down the Philistines. Have probably gone into this area and like locked it down, right? So this is not a simple or easy task, yeah. And I highly doubt Philistines came with less than anything like 2,000 people, right? So there's a big concern you can see in the reaction of the people that they're afraid, right? It's like, whoa, 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 like what are you asking of us right now? Like we are fugitives here. We are no position to try and defend anything right now. We can barely defend ourselves. What do you mean you want us to fight these people? So when he goes the second time, it's not like, because I think David was well and ready to just go the first time, right? But of course, like hearing the reaction of the people, it would have sown a little doubt. It would have sown a little bit of like, oh yeah, this is actually a lot bigger than I thought it was. What am I actually thinking of doing right now? And when he goes to God the second time, it doesn't, you could say it's a weakness of faith, right? Some people might say it's a weakness of faith. What I see is a very human reaction, right? Like he is in already one of the toughest situations, right? It's actually amazing in the first place he's thinking of defending his people. He's actually trying to do something extremely noble. And yet there's this human reaction where it's like, I actually don't know if I can do this. Like, Lord, give me some reassurance. And when he's given that reassurance, he takes hold of it and says, no, we're going, right? And actually ends up defending the people, right? And this actually will come at a bit of a cost to him. But one thing it really shows about David is his character, yeah? Like his first thought is not, oh, I'm stuffed. Oh, I need to hide. No, I can't show myself. I can't reveal myself. His first thought is what? These people are in trouble. There's no one to defend them. Let me be the one who defends. Right? Like, David's tale starts with him defending the weakest of the people. Defending those who had tribulation. Defending those who had no one to protect them. Right? And it asks or begs the question of ourselves, and I speak to myself first. When I'm going through a hard time, what is my reaction? Like, is my reaction to curl up in a ball and like say, no, I don't want to talk to anyone, everyone leave me alone, and to make in some sense, make a scene to draw attention so people know something is wrong and come and help me? Or is my reaction like David's, is like, no, let me find the other people struggling with me because I can understand how they feel now, right? And it's a very Christ-like thing to do, where Christ, in the midst of his suffering on the cross, who is he thinking about the whole time? Everyone but himself. Absolutely everyone but himself, right? He turns to his mother, he turns to John, right? He turns to the people who are punishing, or not punishing him, the people who are scourging him, people who put him on this cross, and says, Lord, forgive them, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? And that's why God later on says he's a man after my own heart, because he has that sense of love to others that is superhuman, if I can put it like that. And it really shows the beautiful character of David. Okay, perfect. Can we go and read, please, verses 6 to 13?
Now it happened when Abiathar the son of Ahimelech fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with an ephod in his hand. And Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. And so Saul said, God has delivered him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars. Then Saul called all the people together for war, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. When David knew that Saul plotted evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. Then David said, O Lord God of Israel, your servant has certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. Then David said, will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will deliver you. So David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah and went wherever they could go. Then it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, so he halted the expedition.
Okay, perfect. So, what's happened in this interaction? Right, so David has defended Keilah, right? Saul finds out he is there, yeah? What happens? David knows that Saul has found out, so he goes to God, right? And he asks him two questions. What are the two questions? What are the two questions? Oh, next one, so verse 10, 11. Sorry, verse 11 specifically. So will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as his servant has heard? Right, so the first one is asking, okay, will these people rat me out to Saul, pretty much? Will they hand me over to Saul? And will Saul actually come down? And the answer from God is yes to both. Right? In the first instance, it's crazy. Like, he just defended these people. And God is telling him, they will rat you out. They will hand you over to Saul if given the chance. And Saul is coming down. Right? There's a few interesting things to pick out in this little passage. So the first thing, look, what does Saul say right at the start? In verse 7. So Saul has found out that David is in Keilah. He's found out he's trapped. Trapped why? Because he's in a city that is walled off. Right? So he's in like a little fortress. There's walls around him. It's not easy for him to get out and escape with 600 people even. Right? So Saul misguidedly says, God sold him into my hands, for he shut himself in by entering a city with gates and bars. Right? And it's extremely misguided of Saul. Right? Like, at this point, like if we're being as objective as possible, is God with him? No. Right? God is not with Saul. Yeah? If anything, he's with David trying to protect him so he can set him up as the next king. Right? So Saul has done something here which like I'll speak of myself, we can do unintentionally. Right? Where we think we're actually doing the right things. Where we think we actually are seeking God and we're looking for signs in everything, but we're missing something very fundamental. And the thing we might be missing is that we might actually not be worshipping God the way we should be. Like, in some situations we might say, God, why is this thing happening in my life? And then I'll look back and see, when that thing was happening, how was I? How's my relationship with God? And I'll look back and say, wait, I wasn't praying. Wait, I wasn't doing this. I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't confessing. How can I expect that God is going to show me a sign? How can I expect God is with me if I'm not doing these things? Right? And this is the mistake Saul makes. Right? Where he's not in the right posture, if I can put it like that, towards God. Right? He's been very arrogant the whole story. He's been angry, trying to murder this guy who's done nothing to him. Right? And yet he's saying God is with me. Like, the two things don't add up. They don't make sense. Right? If we don't have a right relationship with God, then we don't hear him clearly. And a lot of time, if we are trying to hear him and convince ourselves we are actually hearing him, we actually are hearing ourselves. Right? This is Saul, his own conscience, speaking to him, saying, yes, must be a sign that God is with me because this situation has happened to my advantage. Right? But no, like, he's completely misguided. And it's a lesson, or it's a question sometimes we need to ask ourselves, that if I feel like God is distant, or I feel like things are going wrong in my relationship with God, or things are going wrong in my life, and look back and see why. Right? If you look at the great saints in our church, they go through like the toughest things possible, right? Like Pope Krolos for the longest time was persecuted by members of his own church, right? Or people calling him crazy because he's praying liturgies every day, right? And that same Pope Krolos changed the church. Saint Athanasius, right? Like, he goes into exile 6 times because he defended the faith, right? Like, the Arians don't leave him alone, and the guy can't get a break from them. Saint Severus, actually, whose feast day was on Sunday, right? Like, because he wanted to stick to the non-Chalcedonian faith, right? The Christology of Cyril. He was persecuted for a long time. Actually had to run to Egypt and pretend like he wasn't the patriarch of, was it Constantinople? Oh, yeah, I think Constantinople, right? Like, and in all of these things, like, if you look at the outward things that are happening, you could say, no, God's not with them. But no, actually quite the opposite, yeah? Like, they had the right worship, so these things became not as big a deal. These things weren't the problem, right? Like, whereas Saul has gone the other way around, where he's seeing a good thing is happening, like, materially, so he's saying, no, God must be with me. Not necessarily the case. Actually, a lot of times not the case. Funnily enough, the people who God is with the most are generally the ones who suffer, right? And Christ promised that in the world you have tribulation, but be of good cheer, you have overcome the world. Not you will have no tribulation, right? So he sort of missed the point. He's missed the mark here. And a very interesting thing happens here. So they make this big deal about an ephod, I think is how you pronounce it, being brought by Abiathar, yeah, who's the son of the high priest, yeah? And he brings it to David. Now, what seems to be implied here is that David is given one of the priestly garments, the ephod, to wear, right? And you might question why. Like, why is David, like Saul earlier in the story, gets wrecked because he tries to do something priestly when he shouldn't, right? When he tries to offer a sacrifice. The one distinction we'll make here is that David actually doesn't use it in the capacity of a priest, right? So he puts it on almost as a symbol of his closeness to God, right? As a way to say, Lord, I really need your guidance here. I don't know what I'm doing, so I will come and beseech you. He doesn't do it in front of the people. He doesn't do it as a public thing. He doesn't do it to sacrifice. He does this as like a symbol of closeness, as a way to beseech God. Now, I'm not saying all of us put on galabiyas and try to be pretending to be priests when we need to pray. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But in this, we see a beautiful symbol, right? We see here a symbol of Christ, right? Who was what? Both priest and king. Yeah? And here you have David, not king yet, and not a priest, but playing in the roles of both, who comes before God to beseech, right? And it's beautiful you see in the character of David, even this early in the story, and not when he's king yet, when he's still struggling, he's showing Christ-like qualities. He's a type of Christ, as we say, where he's showing the heart of God, the love despite tribulation, and he's also like symbolizing Christ to us. He's showing us like how we should beseech God, right? Yeah, and then so he tries to come down, David escapes, and Saul gives up on not chasing him, but he gives up on this particular expedition, as it says. So he halted the expedition. Okay, perfect. And then you have, we read verse 13, correct? Yeah, sorry, Mark. Yeah. I wouldn't say the symbol is necessary. It's more like we read the symbol into it. But you might ask, why was he putting on the ephod? I tried to do a little bit of research into it. Some people will guess that it's just because there was two different types of ephods. So there was a type that was like a normal linen ephod that normal people would wear, and had a similar name, right? But then a lot of commentaries would say he wore the ephod prescribed by the law of Moses, like the Urim and the Thummim is what they call it. I might be pronouncing it wrong. Which one he put on? It seems to be the one prescribed by Moses, the one that should have been worn by the high priest. And then the next question might be why he did that. The best guess is that it was like him feeling like I need to do this to beseech God, right? Is it right, wrong? That's a different question. But God accepts it. What we do see for sure is God accepts it. And so that is definitely a marker that like God didn't see this as him overstepping a boundary or doing something wrong. And it's similar in like when he asked for the showbread, similar thing. Like with David, you see weird exceptions like this, but God accepts it in weakness, in the fact that he is going through a tough time. I don't know if that answers, but yeah. Okay, awesome. We read verse 13, correct? Yeah, so I'll just comment on that really quickly. So David is now running away to another place. I can't show this map. Anyway, so remember how we said he went from Nob in the tribe of Benjamin, he went to Gath, he went to Adullam, which is back in Israel, he then went to Moab, which is the land of the Gentiles, he then goes to a forest back in Israel, and now he's running to a place called Ziph, right? Sorry, he went to Zillah first, and then he's going to a place called Ziph. So he's jumping around a lot, so he's done like these ones, and he's jumping around in Israel now. So David, unfortunately, can't find a place to keep his people at this point. Okay, verses 14 to 18.
And David stayed in strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. So David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in a forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that." So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, can you read 18 as well?
Then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding with us in strongholds in the woods, in the hill of Hachilah, which is on the south of Jeshimon?"
Okay, awesome. So you have, as I mentioned, David has sort of gone further south now, away from the forest of Hereth to another forest, right? It's very interesting. He ends up in forests. I think practically because that's the easiest place to hide. But it's just interesting, he goes into what we might call big gardens. And if gardens remind you of anything, it's Gethsemane. There's another symbol that the church fathers reflect on a little bit as well. And see how in verse 14, remember how Saul was thinking about saying, "Oh yeah, God has given him into my hands." Look how it says Saul saw him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. Right? Like Saul was searching, like he was trying to get a hold of this guy any way he could, and yet he wasn't found. And then you have Jonathan, rocks up and is instantly able to find him. Like it doesn't give a long story of how he found him, but Jonathan goes to the place and is able to get in contact with David like easily, right? To show what? God is protecting him. Like it's very obvious God is protecting him. The fact that Jonathan could get a hold of him so easily and Saul could not, it says a lot. And we're going to focus a little bit on Jonathan here, because Jonathan is like the best friend you could ever ask for, right? And it shows qualities that we would hope, and God willing, we hope we show to our friends. And the biggest thing that is very evident in Jonathan is that he does not care about his position or status or his reputation, nothing, right? Like this is a guy who's like, let's put it in context of like with talk about like olden days, right? When you had the kings and battles and war and all of that, we don't have as much now. But you have like, people would fight over the throne, right? Like you see any kind of medieval time like show, whatever, people fighting over the throne left, right, center, right? And Jonathan like doesn't care. Does not care at all. He knows that David is the one being set up as the next king by God. He knows. And he's not envious. He's not jealous. He doesn't care, right? If anything, he goes to David, he's like, "You will be set up as king and I'll be on your right hand." As in to say, I know you'll be king ahead of me and I don't care. That is fine with me, right? Like pretty much at the cost of everything his father, if you can put it like that, has built for him, he's willing to go to David and say, "You are my friend. You are the one God has chosen. I see God's character in you. That is enough for me. I don't care." Right? He does not seek his own is pretty much the best way I could put it. Right? Like, in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, was that love does not seek its own. Right? Jonathan specifically here is not seeking his own. He doesn't care. Another thing that's beautiful in the character of Jonathan is he finds the truth. Right? Like he knows that what his father is doing is wrong. And he knows that. And so because he knows that, he doesn't compromise on that truth. Right? He's like, my father is in the wrong here. David is not. So I will defend the truth. Which is why he allows David to escape. It's why he allows David, even here, to stay where he is. And he doesn't tell his father where he's gone. Right? He doesn't tell him exactly where he's located. Right? And the beautiful thing is his friendship is not based on anything material. Right? What do I mean by that? Like he goes to David. He doesn't bring an army with him. He doesn't bring anyone to support. Because he can't. Like he's not in a position to do that. But the one thing he can provide is just his presence. Right? So the one thing he puts, like he's able to do, he does. Even though it might not seem much. He goes to David and says, "You pretty much confirms you are my friend." And he reconfirms, what's the word they use exactly? Let me just find it. The covenant they made with each other. Right? The covenant they made before the Lord. Right? Jonathan is like the best friend you could possibly ever have in your life. Yeah? It's just characteristics I would hope I could somehow even show a little bit. He's a beautiful, beautiful character. Okay. Let's go. So do you have a question? Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Can we please read verses 19 to 23?
Wait, what was the verses? Sorry.
Sorry, 19 to 23.
19. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding? Is David not hiding with us in strongholds?"
Wait, one sec. Sorry, I forgot. There's one thing I forgot to mention. So notice how the people from Keilah ratted him out. Notice what's happening here again. The Ziphites found out where he is, and like, "Hey, Saul, we know where he is. Come get him." Right? Like everything is stacked against him. Even the people of Israel are against him. So he's in a dire situation, and we're about to see how bad it gets. Yeah, sorry.
Then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding with us in strongholds, in the woods, in the hill of Hekeilah, which is on the south of Jeshimon? Now therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to come down, and our part shall be to deliver him into the king's hand." And Saul said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, for you have compassion on me. Please go and find out for sure and see the place where his hideout is, and who has seen him there, for I am told he is very crafty. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I will search for him throughout all the clans of Judah."
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So notice again, Saul has made the same mistake twice, right? Like, he's assumed that because the Ziphites have helped him, that Khalas, God's on my side again. But he hasn't learned the lesson. Like, he made the same mistake of assuming that God gave him into his hands in Keilah, right? And what ended up happening there, he couldn't get a hold of him. The guy escaped, and he chased him for ages and couldn't get a hold of him, right? And Jonathan found it easily. And again, he makes this mistake, assuming that these people are the ones who are going to save him. And one thing it really teaches us is those who trust, and of course people are nice and we love our friends and everyone, right? But if our hope is in people, it's a vain hope, right? It sounds very depressing, I'm sorry. But it's a vain hope, right? Our only respite, our only hope is in God himself, right? In the Gospel of John, I'm going to maybe butcher the wording, but the beautiful thing is where Christ, it's said about Christ, he did not give his heart to men, for he knew what was in the heart of men. He did not give himself over to men, for he knew what was in the heart of men. Right? Like when they try to come and make him king, and he doesn't care for it. Why does he not care for it? Because he knows how fickle people can be, like in the nicest way possible. Right? Like these same people who want to come make him king, who say they love him now, are going to crucify him not too long. Right? So he knows that his hope should not rest in the people, right? For us also, although we can have great friends like Jonathan, right? Their friendship was based on what? Both of them loving God, right? Their hope was in God. It wasn't in the people around them. So when things change, when people change, when they try to rat David out, he didn't care, right? Like he didn't care. This didn't trouble him. This didn't worry him because he knew in the first place people weren't going to be the one who win over him. Whatever God had dictated was going to be what happens. Right? So he trusted in that. And the beautiful thing about David is you don't see any prayer here about destroying Saul or stopping Saul. Right? Like he's prayed about, should I go to Keilah or not and save the people? And then the second time, should I leave Keilah or not? Right? Asking God, should I leave or not? Because I don't know what's about to happen here. And not once do you hear him mention, Lord, please strike down Saul, I've had enough of him. Right? Like, and you'll see this in the chapters to come. It gets to an extent that's crazy. Like, he has 50 opportunities to kill Saul, doesn't take a single one. And he gets upset. Like, the crazy thing is, he gets upset because he cut a little piece of his robe. Right? Like, that's the heart of David. Right? He doesn't wish evil for anyone. Maybe later down the track. But he doesn't wish evil on anyone, right? And that's it. It's a tough thing to do, like to even your own enemy, not to wish the worst on them, not to wish anything bad on them. It's a character of David that's beautiful. There's a guy at our church actually. This is a sort of side note, tangent completely. He loves David so much, but the one thing he never reads, and which is why I say later on things don't go the best. He always stops at the story of David and Bathsheba and doesn't continue. Like he will read it himself, but whenever he talks about David, he won't mention it. And it's in love. Like it's in the fact that seeing the beautiful character of David, it upsets him that he does stuff up later down the track. But even in that is beautiful. That when he does stuff up, that his repentance is so great. Okay, let's go to verses 24 to 29.
So they arose, went to Zeph before Saul, but David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the plains of the south of Jessamon. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were encircling David and his men to take them. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, Hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. Therefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines, and so they called that place the Rock of Escape. Then David went up from there and dwelt in stronghold at En-Gedi.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So David has actually now left the land of Ziph, and he's gone to another place altogether, the place called Maon. I don't know how to pronounce it, I'll be honest with you. But he's gone even further south. Yeah? So David has done a lot of traveling, let's just put it like that. And here in this passage, sorry, the men of Ziph have now gone out to try and find where David is for Saul. And they see that he's gone further out to the wilderness near the place they've moved to, right? And you end up seeing David get backed into a corner. Like you think this is like khalas, like Saul has been chasing him for so long, and he's now in a position that has become very precarious. Now, I want you to try and picture this scene. David keeps moving further south. Like this whole time he's been moving south to get away from Saul. And he's now moved so far south that he's gone towards where a mountain is. Yeah? And he's now stuck, right? Because he is like, you have Saul's on one side of the mountain, David's on one side of the mountain, right? And it makes it, it seems to be very clear that there isn't a way for David to keep going past it. Like he's sort of stuck on the other side of the mountain. And Saul knows this. So what does he end up doing? He ends up splitting his troops, right and left, to try and surround David. And you think this is done. Like there's actually no escape. There's no way out of this. Like humanly speaking, there's no way out of this. And what's the solution? What ends up happening to save David? Right, the Philistines come back. Now I want you to think with me. Remember how we mentioned earlier that they went to Keilah, right? The Philistines went to Keilah and tried to capture the city, and Saul didn't react, right? Why is he reacting now? So there's a specific, read between the lines a little bit. Why is he reacting now? What land do you think they've attacked? Likely the lands of Saul, right? Likely. Of course, is reading between lines a little bit, and I read into Father Tadros Malati a little bit to get this. But it seems likely that they've gone and attacked Saul's own personal land or land close to his kingdom, right, where he is. And this, Saul cannot ignore, right? He can't ignore it, because if he loses his own lands, he doesn't have the lands of the king, he has nowhere. He doesn't have a residence. He has nothing left, right? So he is forced to, despite how far he has gone to try and get David and how close he got, he's forced out, right? He's forced to run. And there's no other way to put this other than that was perfect timing, perfect intervention from God, right? Because there's no way out of it. This was a situation that was dire. I don't know how else to put it to you. They could have all died there. Then and there, they could have all been dead. Maybe a few hours, if they had gone around the whole mountain, that they would have been done. But just in time, there's enough of a distraction to force Saul to leave, right? Now, not to say that God likes to leave things to the last minute, but sometimes we will question, when things, we're waiting on something, who knows what it is, like a job. Let's say you're on a job hunt, and you've been on that job hunt for ages and nothing is coming, you've interviewed 1 billion times over. So, oh yeah, you made it to the next round. Just at the end, oh, we hired someone else who was already at the company. For that to happen 1 billion times over, right? And you can constantly think, at this point, khalas, I've given up hope. And then you'll find in those most hopeless situations, for some reason, for some reason. A miracle, no, not a miracle. Like there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel, and you get the job you never imagined you could get, and it's the best job possible, and it's amazing, it's beautiful. Wow, like why did all this happen, right? And sometimes, this is me speaking, sometimes I take it as like God is trying to get me to remember, don't rely on yourself, right? Don't rely on yourself. Like, do as much as you can, of course, but don't ever think like, yeah, I'm doing everything is in my hand, I am the one who's fully responsible. Because no, like we have a God who cares about us, who loves us, and is actually concerned with even the small, like we sometimes think, oh yeah, God is too big for these things, but no, like in the minutiae of your life, like the little things you think are dumb, God cares because he cares about you, right? There's a servant, actually I'm not going to say where, but I always like watch and I'm like in awe of how they think about things, where like they're so concerned about the other person that like the silly things, the things I'm like, like, oh sorry, how do I say that in English? Forget about it, like who cares? Like it's not a big deal, it's not a problem to be worried about. And it's like, no, because I care about the person, I care about this. I'm like, whoa. Like something that seems so stupid and it's just like come on bro, just be more flexible, be more chill, it doesn't matter. It's like, no, because I care about the person, I care about this small thing that you think is dumb. And it's like, God's like that with us. Like sometimes we think, no, it's only the big decisions in my life where I need to ask him to help. But no, get him to help you with your dumb things, right? Like the things that are concerning you that you're worried about, be very honest and tell God, I'm concerned about it. And you'll find he'll answer in ways you don't expect. And he'll give you a way through when you think there is none. When you think everything is closed and staffed and there's no way out, he'll give you a way through. But it's conditional. And the very basic condition is this. Do I have a relationship with him? Right? Do you know when in the Old Testament it talks about he shut Pharaoh's heart, he hardened Pharaoh's heart, he made this other person heart, like that happens a few times in the Old Testament. And the contemplation that I really love is that it's not God like being like, no, I'm going to take over your free will and get you to do this thing. It's actually just in fact God's like, okay, you want to do this thing? I'm going to back up and let you do what you want. Like it's actually him conceding to our free will, which is the most humbling thing in the world, right? And it's because these people have no relationship with him. They don't want to have anything to do with him. So because of that, he lets them enforce their free will. C.S. Lewis has a very interesting or amazing quote. It's like, God is waiting for the day where he can say, let your will be done. God is waiting for the day he can say to you, let your will be done. Because your will has finally aligned with his, right? And that's the condition. If I have a relationship with God, he cares. And he cares even for the people who don't have a relationship with him. But if you want to enforce your free will, he will let you, right? And the really cool thing is notice how the name of the place changes, right? It changes to the rock of dividing or the rock of escape, right? It's marking, it's a remembrance of when God helped David, right? My guess, this is of course my guess, that David later on called this place the rock of escape, and because he was king, he probably labeled it as this place has this name now, so the people can remember it, right? Like in the same way when Abraham did something, that place was named, and likely because Abraham retained that name, right? He remembered that's the place where this happened, right? And it's a thing for us to try and practice and remember. I know I mentioned this last week. But when God helps us with things, don't forget them easily, right? Because the next time something goes wrong, you want to remember it, right? So not give names to places, like don't name places, but maybe have a journal, maybe have anything a small thing that can remind you God helped you with this thing. Be it like, I don't know, some people like to have hand crosses in their pockets, right? Which seems a bit like they're not priests. Like, are you trying to be a priest? What's going on? But like some people, it's just a remembrance. So like that when they're through the day and they go to reach the keys from their pocket, they're like, oh, wait, there's a cross there, and they remember, right? Have things to mark your relationship with God. Have things that remind you of him throughout the day, right? So that when things are bad and things are terrible and you're in a corner and you've had enough and you're sick of work and whatever, you have him. I think that's pretty much all I had. Was there any questions? Actually, the last thing, he then ends up moving, now that Saul has backed up into his own lands to defend against the Philistines. He goes to a place northeast of Maon, which is M-A-O-N, called En-Gedi. So he's now done, okay, let's see if I remember. He's gone from here, which is in the middle of Jerusalem, to Philistine. He's gone to Gath. He then goes to the cave of Adullam, which is in the middle of the land of Judah. He then goes to Moab, which is a completely different country in the land of Philistines. He then goes to the forest of Hereth. He then goes to Ziph. He then goes to, I forgot after that. Oh, sorry, before Ziph. He goes to Keilah, and then he goes to Ziph, and then he goes to Maon, and then he finally gets escape and goes back up this way, right? So he's gotten some space back, I think is the best way to put it. He's actually allowed to go back up now because he's not getting chased down. But yeah, that was pretty much everything I had. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mark. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To a point where God intervened to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
My question is free will and God's protection.
Mm-hmm.
How does that mix up happen?
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
understand my question?
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, let me put it like this. So we all have free will, correct? We will, let's make that assumption. Actually, not assumption. We'll start with that foundation. And each one's free will in some way actually affects my own. What do I mean by that? The choice of one person, say you decide to punch me, right? Your free will to choose to punch me has a consequence on me where I'm hurt because of your choice, right? So when we say free will, funnily enough, we actually are imposed on other people by their free will, by the way they think, by the way they do things, right? Which is why politics is a thing. This is why voting is a thing, where the vote of the other people actually affects my own life because they've chosen something I haven't, for example. Now, that actually applies in some sense to God, right? Like he is also a person, right? He also has a will. Now, he will sometimes, when he wills good, or wills things to happen, he will do things, he will intervene. There's actually the book Miracles by C.S. Lewis. If you want like a in-depth exploration of that, he'll go into it. Where actually the intervention of God is a natural thing, right? Because in the first instance, he intervened by creating, right? Like there's some sense in which God imposes his will, but there is a fine line. Like he doesn't overimpose. Like he doesn't go to the point where he breaks our free will. Where that boundary is, it's hard to set a line in the sand. But what we know for sure is that he, in each instant, respects our free will, which is also a humbling thing for the mighty God to actually come to our level and actually accept that we will not accept him is amazing. It's crazy. Did you have something on other one? Yeah. I think, I don't know if my answer answered it, but I feel like I would say the same thing actually. it's the idea of like, God has a will also. Like we are dealing with, like even on earth among humans, we all have wills, right? And I actually am affected by the wills and choices of others. And in some sense, God's will also affects what happens with me, right? Where like, even the story of Jonah, right? Where God, for the better good, because we know God to be good, he actually sort of pushes Jonah shwaya and like, it's like, no, you are going to Nineveh, you need to go preach to these people, even though Jonah didn't really want to, right? Now we can say, oh, that's actually him overriding Jonah's free will. No, because Jonah still actually had choices to make, right? Even when he got to Nineveh, he had a choice. He didn't have to preach. So in some sense, like God can influence, God will never force, I think is the line we can draw. In the same way that other people can influence, other people can do whatever, but in the end of the day, the final choice is actually ours, right? Someone can hold you to gunpoint to say, confess if you're a Christian or not, and in the end, your choice is to say yes or no, right? Like they can force you as much as they can, but at some point, there is a choice you make. I don't know if that helps. I feel like I confused you completely. Did it help at all? Something? Okay. Abuna, please feel free to add.
And at the same time, we know that underlying his reasoning to destroy David was to keep his honor and his dignity, and he was unhappy with the fact that David was more popular than himself, and that's what drove him to madness. Well, if he lost his kingdom, then he loses his honor and his dignity. So he chose to go back to protect his kingdom. Part of the natural world at the time is that the Philistines are going to attack and that kind of thing. And so the spiritual principle is that, yeah, David is honored and this David is going to be looked after by God. And that's the spiritual principle. Whether Saul chose to go back or to stay fighting against David, God would have protected David at this point in his life. Because, God, I think sometimes God does intervene in amongst the free will of others to protect those that are in his hands. Those that their free will has been to put themselves in the hand of God. If my choice is to do that, then God can intervene on my behalf at times for specific reasons. And God still had very specific reasons in the life of David.
I think in a way it also alludes to what you were talking about before with Saul's free will being that he didn't exactly choose to fight the Philistines when it wasn't, like when David wasn't involved in it, and obviously his focus was entirely on David, and throughout the entire time, despite being afraid, David still asked of God and he listened to him. So God literally knew what was going to happen. So he knew like what the Philistines were, like the will of the Philistines. He knew the will of Saul, and he basically told David, just trust me. Like if you go to this place, like things will work out. So basically, the way it works is because David chose to go to that place, like where even though he got surrounded, the fact that things were working in the background, like Saul's own actions were going against him. So him chasing David was allowing the Philistines to go into his own territory. So in a way, like I think like that what that shows is the fact that like you said, God doesn't enforce his will on us, but he knows, because he knows everything and he knows like what people will do and he knows the consequences of people's actions. He asks us to trust in his will so that we follow him, and that even if like things seem dire, that things will like eventually work out, like through like things, like maybe it might be like from our actions, maybe from other people's actions. So I think it's like sort of a mix of like a few things, like so not just Saul like chasing David, but David trusting God, and obviously the Philistines still like trying to take advantage of it, and so that's what allowed David to survive in the end.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm guessing no more questions or comments. Glory to God for your word.
All right, thank you, Anthony, for taking us through 1 Samuel 22 and 23. So join us next week for 1 Samuel 24. Just a couple of announcements before we stand up for prayer.